I'm Semyon Bychkov. I'm conducting San Francisco Symphony this week in the music of two extraordinary composers, really great personalities that have established tremendous influence over classical music. One of them established it after his lifetime, and the other one was already very much in avant-garde when he was very young. We start the program with Don Juan of Strauss, and Richard Strauss had become a celebrity at the age of 25 when he first performed, he himself conducted this tone poem called Don Juan. And a man of such extraordinary capacity to utilize all the resources of the orchestra's palette and create themes which instantly engraved in listener's brain, so to speak. That was very fresh. That was really quite extraordinary. The energy and the complexity and the richness of this music struck people as something so astonishing that he was immediately nominated to be the guiding light of German music, because 1 year earlier Brahms has died, and 6 years earlier Wagner has died, and so he was deemed to be the successor. And of course, later on, he very much confirmed it when he started creating his extraordinary operas, Salome, particularly Electra, and that is less than a decade later. But from that very beginning with Don Juan, he has very much announced his arrival. And so this poem will be followed by another very early work of his for piano and orchestra called Burleske. And the extraordinary thing about that, and in fact this Burleske will be playing with Kirill Gerstein, who has performed with us here in San Francisco a year ago. We have played together Rachmaninoff's Rhapsody and theme of Paganini, and he created such a fantastic impression that he was asked to come back immediately, and fortunately both of us will be together again. And so this Burleske is also a piece of youthful Strauss, and the extraordinary thing about that little piece is that at the very end of it we hear the kind of nostalgic and melancholic element, a waltz, which makes us think immediately about Strauss of a later periods in his life. And he had this capacity as a young man somehow to imagine what it will feel like in the autumn of his life. And so I'm extremely attached to this little piece, which is played quite rarely, is a little jewel, terribly hard to play, and Kirill does it with an extraordinary fantasy and I would say tremendous control, which is really very difficult. And so that is one composer on the first half of the program, and on the second half it will be Second Symphony of Schumann. And of course Schumann is someone who is a very mysterious figure in the history of 19th century music, remaining to this day. He was married with a great pianist, Clara Wieck, who was his muse, who in many ways inspired him, who was also someone who was very dear to Brahms in his own life, and who understood Schumann. As a very unusual character, this man had difficulty coping with life. In fact, he died of mental illness. And yet there was something so vulnerable and poetic about him, and all the images he creates in his music. He was also a magnificent pianist. And so consequently, what often would happen is people would say, ah, what a wonderful piano music, but when he writes for orchestra, it sounds like piano music played by an orchestra, and doesn't sound so good. In fact, it is basically a fallacy, and it is enough to hear great German orchestras perform this music for whom it is a very natural language to speak, to see that it is not something which is heavy and impossible to really understand. You can trace all the voices, all the texture of this music in all of their splendor and their richness. And the Second Symphony, of course, is one of those extraordinary creations which makes one think that, after all, it wasn't only Brahms who was Beethoven's successor. It was before him already Schumann.